October 2015. The dying breath of autumn had settled over Virginia. Deep inside the heavily fortified walls of Langley, a landline rang in a secure office. The man picking up the receiver was John Brennan, the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, arguably one of the most powerful and feared intelligence chiefs on the planet. But on this day, power was irrelevant. The voice on the other end was young, mocking, and astonishingly calm. "Hello, Director Brennan." Brennan tensed. "Who the hell is this? How did you get this line?" The reply came with a laugh. "It was almost embarrassingly easy. You're really not as clever as you think." Brennan, calculating his next move, asked what the caller wanted. The answer was audacious. $5 trillion. To the US government, this was immediately classified as a coordinated act of cyber terrorism, identity theft, and harassment of top officials. But the reality was far more absurd. Across the Atlantic Ocean, in a small housing estate on the outskirts of a sleepy post-industrial town in the West Midlands of England, a 15-year-old kid sat in his bedroom, his hands still trembling slightly from adrenaline. He could hardly believe what he had just done. Going by the online alias, Marlowe, he was a self-proclaimed stoner who spent his days fueled by indignation and cheap weed. He fancied himself a digital vigilante. Unbeknownst to the world, Marlowe had just initiated one of the most humiliating breaches in US intelligence history. Marlowe was the leader of a loose-knit digital collective that called itself the Renegade Collective. Alongside a handful of other disenfranchised teenagers scattered across the globe, they embarked on a chaotic crusade to dismantle the digital security of the American state. They leaked the personal data of local police officers, federal agents, and Department of Justice officials. They even routed top-secret intelligence documents directly to Julian Assange. In the eyes of the public, they took credit for some of the most high-profile cyber attacks attributed to the group Anonymous. But the truth was far more nuanced. They were hackers acting purely for the thrill, for the ideology, and sometimes just for the laughs. This is their story. To understand how a teenage troll brought the CIA to its knees, we have to rewind to 2008. In a quiet suburb of Virginia, another kid known only as Rook navigated the monotony of American adolescence. He loved video games, soccer, and his dog, but he harbored an intense friction with his father, a government contractor. Rook discovered the intoxicating rush of cheating in online games, which quickly morphed into something far more dangerous. He began tearing apart the code of his computers, learning how to force the machine to do things it wasn't designed to do. 2008 was the golden age for digital mischief. The decentralized hacktivist group Anonymous was at the peak of its notoriety. They were the digital storm that made headlines worldwide. Rook was mesmerized. He saw them as the embodiment of absolute freedom, a force that could make the world tremble without anyone leaving the comfort of their bedroom. But the longer Rook lingered in Anonymous's encrypted chat rooms, the more disillusioned he became. The group was infested with informants and federal agents. People were being arrested, and the sheer volume of infighting and doxing rendered them useless. Anonymous was a victim of its own success, a sprawling mess where nobody could be trusted. Seeking a more sophisticated environment, Rook migrated to an offshoot group called ShadowNet. This group mirrored Anonymous's brand of digital sabotage, but was far more technically advanced. They utilized something known as a botnet, a network of infected computers that could be wielded to launch overwhelming assaults on global servers. One day, Rook was poking around ShadowNet's botnet when he stumbled upon an anomaly. An infected computer belonging to a Canadian medical school at McMaster University. With nothing but curiosity driving him, Rook slipped into the school's digital finances. He pulled up the records of students drowning in debt. The numbers tallied up to $9.4 million. And at the bottom of the digital ledger, there it was, a tempting delete all button. Rook paused. For a moment, he considered the brutal reality of student debt, the mortgages, the ruined credit, the lives tethered to perpetual financial servitude. So he deleted everything. The spreadsheet went to devs and null, a digital void from which nothing returns. It was a massive crime. But to Rook, it felt profoundly righteous. Rook's moral compass shifted rapidly. He realized that his digital arsenal could be used to enact real-world political change when he learned that bestiality was still technically legal in Denmark and that the country had inadvertently become a hub for animal sex tourism. He was livid. Along with other ShadowNet operatives, Rook launched a devastating DDoS attack on the official Danish government website, replaced the homepage with a stark message exposing the nation's cruelty, and tweeted out documented evidence of animal abuse. The international backlash was immediate. The story traveled worldwide, generating massive public outrage, and by April 2015, the Danish parliament finally caved, outlawing the practice. During this time, Rook became an early evangelist of cryptocurrency. He meticulously mined and acquired over 1,000 bitcoins, which would be worth nearly $40 million today. Stashed on an external hard drive, he protected his digital wealth with extreme paranoia. Rook never logged into his home Wi-Fi, instead connecting to a free network at a Dairy Queen half a mile away using a satellite dish. He routed his traffic through multiple Tor nodes and subjected his devices to heavy encryption, forcing him to wait 30 minutes every time he turned them on. He never told a soul what he was doing. But Rook wasn't the only one grappling with a shattered trust in authority. In May 2013, a 29-year-old contractor named Edward Snowden was sitting on a ticking time bomb. Based in Honolulu, Snowden had discovered the US government's sweeping global surveillance apparatus. He knew that the state had the ability to intercept the communications of virtually anyone on the planet. Tormented by this violation of basic civil rights, he quietly downloaded the final cache of incriminating documents, told his employer he needed leave to treat his epilepsy, and fled to Hong Kong, a place he viewed as a sanctuary for free speech. There he met journalists Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras and handed over the evidence that would transform him into the most iconic whistleblower of the modern era. Snowden's revelations sent a shockwave through the world, sparking a long overdue debate about the delicate balance between national security and individual privacy. For Rook, Snowden was the ultimate inspiration. He realized that silence was complicity. He decided that the architects of surveillance needed to know what it felt like to be violated, to have their private information weaponized against them. He didn't have to wait long for an opportunity. Meanwhile, back in the UK, Marlowe was seething. Though he was young, he had developed a deep, seething hatred for American foreign policy, specifically the US bombing campaigns in the Middle East and the ongoing destruction of Gaza. He wanted to lash out at the people making those decisions. He founded the Renegade Collective, and his first target was James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence. Clapper had committed the cardinal sin of digital hygiene. He had left his private phone number and home address publicly visible. Marlowe hacked his email and posted the proof on social media. When Rook saw the post, he reached out to Marlowe. A dangerous alliance was forged. The two hackers set their sights on the ultimate trophy, John Brennan. Marlowe discovered that Brennan's number was registered through Verizon. He called the telecommunications company's internal tech support, adopting the persona of a confused, stressed field technician on a repair call. The support agent asked for an employee ID. Marlowe improvised a random 4-digit sequence. Miraculously, it worked. Suddenly, Marlowe had Brennan's account number, his security PIN, and his private AOL email address. Using this minimal amount of information, Marlowe reset the passwords and seized total control over the CIA director's digital identity. The harassment campaign began immediately. Marlowe passed Brennan's private cell number to Rook, and they began spam calling the head of the CIA relentlessly. They mocked him, condemned US foreign policy, and made chilling threats. Brennan was terrified. He had no idea who these people were or how far they were willing to go. He was forced to go into hiding, surrounded by heavily armed security details, while his family was relocated to a secure compound. But the hack was not just a prank. Marlowe discovered a treasure trove of classified intelligence within Brennan's AOL account. After sending a few provocative screenshots to Twitter, they ultimately decided to follow Snowden's blueprint. The files were handed to Julian Assange and published by WikiLeaks in October 2015. The leaked documents were catastrophic. Among them was Brennan's 47-page SF-86 application, a highly sensitive security clearance form that laid bare his personal history, psychological evaluations, and past drug usage. Worse yet, the emails contained Bush-era foreign policy memos and sensitive correspondence from the Senate Intelligence Committee, outlining exactly how the U.S. government sought to legalize torture in the post-9/11 world. The breach didn't just ruin Brennan's reputation, it cost the agency over $1.5 million in damages. Several undercover operatives had to be extracted from the field out of fear of retaliation. But what truly wounded the U.S. intelligence community was the sheer simplicity of the attack. When interviewed, Marlowe claimed the hack was a 1 out of 10 in difficulty. He openly mocked the CIA director, stating, "He's supposed to be the head of the CIA? I think he should be a little bit smarter." The Renegade Collective wasn't finished. They breached the account of FBI Deputy Director Mark Giuliano, uncovering a massive database containing the personal records of over 20,000 FBI agents and 9,000 Department of Justice officials. They posted it all online. They infiltrated the Justice Department's automated booking system, exposing the records of federal prisoners and former hackers. One institution after another suffered humiliating data breaches. It was a digital rampage. Did these reckless teenagers actually think they could escape unscathed? As Rook later described it, he had slipped so far down the rabbit hole that he simply stopped caring. At that time, all bets were off, he said. I became disillusioned with the public's complacency. We were going to bring attention to these crimes through pure chaos. Marlowe, fully aware he had poked a sleeping dragon, openly mused about fleeing to Russia, and half-jokingly feared he would eventually be tortured. But the long arm of the law moves slower than a server shutdown. Yet, it never misses. Rook let his guard down for just a single night. While drinking with a friend over an Xbox Live voice chat, he drunkenly, arrogantly boasted about the notorious CIA hack. The friend listened in silence. He later turned Rook in. When federal agents finally stormed Rook's home, they didn't politely knock. They smashed through the door while his computer was decrypting, assault rifles aimed at his chest. They dragged him out of his room, and he watched in horror as they made off with his hard drive, the one that held his 1,000 bitcoins. The fortune was gone forever. Marlowe didn't fare much better. The British police raided his home in the West Midlands and seized all his hardware. Because he was underage in the United Kingdom, he received a shockingly lenient sentence: 2 years in a juvenile detention facility. He became the first minor in UK history to be jailed for hacking. Today, he keeps his head low and works in cybersecurity. Rook paid a much higher price for his political crusade. He was sentenced to 5 years in a federal penitentiary, ordered to pay $145,000 in restitution, and due to federal regulations, he spent a significant portion of that time in solitary confinement. In court, he remarked, "I thought what I was doing was right in terms of political justice, but 2 years later, I realized I was completely wrong." As for Snowden, his life remains one of perpetual exile in Russia, constantly protected from American extradition. The journey of these hackers proved that even the US government has a digital Achilles heel. But it also proved a harsh, cynical truth. The state rarely forgives those who expose its flaws. By December 2023, the Biden administration quietly reauthorized Section 702 of the FISA Act, a law that permits the government to spy on anyone, including its own citizens, without a warrant. The US court system has already found that the FBI misused this vast surveillance apparatus over 278,000 times. They have spied on political donors, monitored Black Lives Matter protesters, and tracked those involved in the January 6th riots. One has to wonder, in this ceaseless silent war between the state and the individual, who is truly watching us right now? And is it still being done for the LOLs? Or is it something far more sinister?